Okay, so why did I write this book? And I wrote this book because I tried to unsuccessfully write this book for about 8 years. And about halfway through that, I took a pause, put all of my various rough drafts down, and went back and wrote on shamanism. Uh, the other book, Midnight Jaguar Tales of a Suburban Shaman, is for another video. But I want to talk about in this video why I decided to write on shamanism. And honestly, it was to help my fellow practitioners. In Midnight Jaguar, I talk about my story and like my journey to become a shaman. And, being this white suburban kid, it was a strange journey, but a pretty incredible one. And I really wanted to get my story down, but it was hard to tell. And so I did things a little bit out of order, and my first book was written to fellow practitioners of shamanism, and what I really wanted to do is help them become better shamans. Now, of course, I'm young. I've been practicing shamanism for a decade, so there's a bit of audacity about that, but I was fortunate in the sense that I got to spend time at the Four Winds Society, which is like the major shamanic school. It's the best one. You can go do a full month-long training program there. It's not broken up into a few weekends. You get a real immersive dive for your sort of modern Western shamanic school. And then I was fortunate enough to do an apprenticeship with the founder of the Four Winds Society. And I got to spend a year. So I got to see the inside of the best shamanic school in the world. And there are wonderful things about it. But there's only kind of so much you can do in a month. And, traditional shamanic apprentices lasted years. And it's hard to do nowadays, especially when a bunch of people want to be trained to become shamans. And so what I saw was that there was a lot of technique and the sort of philosophical worldview that you would get in a traditional apprenticeship that would slowly bleed in over a number of years, and eventually you would really learn to see through shamanic eyes. You would learn to see in the way that your mentors did. It's hard to do that in a month. It's hard to do that over online videos and books. And so what I saw is a lot of people would go and they would come out, be excited, they would practice for a bit, and eventually would kind of fizzle out. And part of the reason that it would fizzle out is they lacked this philosophical understanding of not just shamanism, but the way shamanism is half integrated into Western society. And so I wrote on shamanism as a way to sort of bridge the indigenous world and the modern Western world and help the practitioner who's sort of stuck in between. A lot of times, a lot of like new agey, wishy-washy, everything is great and grand philosophy fills that void, and it's just unfortunate. I think it ends up distracting from some of the best parts about shamanism, which is that in essence, as modern Western people, very detached from the natural world, it offers a way to put you back in touch with the most primitive, instinctual part of who you are. And the thing that was the foundation of all modern organized religions, philosophies, medicine, astronomy, etc. So you really get put back in touch with this primitive part of yourself. And then on top of that, all these other wonderful additions that we've made throughout history, they sort of take a better form. They're more concretized. So yeah. So really what I try to do in the book is I try to offer very practical advice, because I think that even if you don't agree with a perspective, it's nice when someone takes a stand and they say like, hey, here's my view of things, or here's a problem. This is how I've answered it, and this is why. You see a lot in, you know, new agey stuff, some of this people that want to be a guru, they don't really like to be questioned as their thinking is. They just want to say something and have people accept it, or maybe even just disagree. But the breaking it down layer by layer by layer of like, hey, here are all the steps. Here's how my thinking evolved through them. This is my end point. I think a lot of people, like, they show the answer to the math problem, but they don't show their work. And as annoying as that could be in school sometimes to show your work, especially if you get the right answer, showing your work helps other people figure out the answer and figure out how to do it. And so that was my goal with my book, was to show my work on the overall structure of shamanism within the context of a Western society, within the context of a Western mind and a Western person. And so I want to give one example of what that looks like in a very practical sense. And that is sort of comparing and contrasting being a shaman in an indigenous society versus a modern Western practitioner. So in indigenous societies, you know, it's 50 to 150, maybe at most 200 people. It's small, especially if they're hunter-gatherers. The shaman plays the role between the mediator and, like, he mediates the tribe and everything else, all of existence, the sun, the moon, the stars, the trees. Oftentimes they'll figure out where they should go to hunt. And so you see this idea of like a communal mind, and the shaman is a key part of that. So when the shaman sees an illness in someone, sees something go wrong in them, it doesn't just represent the individual person, it represents something wrong with the entire community. And that is very different than our modern Western society, where, you know, the shaman doesn't know a lot of times the people that they're working with, that they're doing sessions for, and they meet them for the first time, and they're expected a lot of times to, you know, perform a miracle, because oftentimes the person is coming to them after they've exhausted all their other options and they're desperate, and they're hoping someone can help them. And that puts the shaman in a very difficult place. So that's the first part. But there's a very nuanced layer to that is important. And that is that for many shamanic practitioners, they have this idea that seeing energy is like the highest thing that you can do as a shaman. And I get that. I you know, it's a very important part of the work. And if you're gifted with that ability to see energy fields and to see into the spirit world, more power to you. However, a lot of people aren't. And I think what happens is I've seen practitioners feel down on themselves about that, where they might even have a really strong intuition and they might feel energy, or they might just know things really well, but actually seeing it themselves just doesn't happen. And on the one hand, you could say, which I've seen a lot of people do, is they say, like, modern society, we're so far out of balance. In olden times, most people could see energy, and so they see themselves as suffering like a modern illness. But I think partly that's true, but I think it's not entirely accurate. I think that in indigenous societies, the shaman didn't have to restrict their vision. So they knew everyone in the community, and they could just observe them at all times. And even if they're not, you know, doing the spiritual work, they can, even if they're out hunting or they're building a hut or whatever they're doing, they're always, they have a sort of blanket permission to keep an eye on everyone. And there's another side of that, which is that, well, we'll get to that in a second, but they have a blanket permission. Whereas modern practitioners, like, I personally would see it as unethical. Like, if I'm going around in the world and I'm looking at everyone's energy field and they haven't given me permission to work with them, like, yeah, it is deeply unethical. And I'm a bit of a loser because it's the same thing. It's like if you talk to a therapist and just they practice therapy, but they're not your therapist out in the world, and then they start doing therapy stuff on you, and you're like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? I'm just trying to have a conversation with you as a human being. Why are you doing that? I feel the same thing about being a shaman and looking at people's energies. Hey, you didn't ask me to do it. I'm not going to look. And also, I don't want the responsibility of that. Like, I want to go to the store and talk to the cashier and just have a nice, short, pleasant conversation, or nothing. Just stand there with each other. I don't want to be looking at all the things they've been through or what's going on at a deeper level. It's none of my business, and that also just sounds exhausting. So I think that's the first challenge the modern practitioner faces is you actually have to keep your vision closed most of the time. And if you're trying to develop an ability to see energy, and 99% of the time, except for when you're in a session with someone, are you allowed to look, like, it's very hard to develop that skill. So then that brings us to a deeper point, which is kind of what is going on there. And that is that I think people, and shaman practitioners too, shamanic practitioners, I think they underestimate the emotional weight of seeing things, like seeing energy. I mean, even me just saying that, seeing things, there is a certain percentage of the population that will either see that as me being some sort of charlatan who's making things up to con people, or as someone who's had some sort of like psychological breakdown and I'm hallucinating things. So that is an ever-present reality if you're a shamanic practitioner. So let's just put that stigma to the side there for a moment and say that beyond just that, the emotional weight of seeing a ghost attached to someone, seeing someone's mother who passed lingering around them, or seeing something malevolent and dark with its own agenda feeding on someone's anger, or, you know, the wound of them not feeling good enough, or some awful thing that happened to them as a child. Seeing those things is overwhelming. And in the indigenous society, the shaman could deal with it immediately. If that happened, the shaman brings them into his little hut and addresses it. And you can't do that as a modern practitioner. You know, maybe they're not your client, or maybe they are your client and they're not ready to deal with that. And that is challenging. It feels, at first, I think, disempowering, but it can make you a bit numb. And that's something I've struggled with throughout my decade of practicing shamanism, is everyone's suffering, and there's only so much you can do, and there's only so many people who will even ask for help. And so I think part of the reason that more people don't see energy, just in general, even not just practitioners, but people in general, is the emotional weight of seeing energy is just exhausting. It's just overwhelming until you hit a point where it just becomes normal. But there's a period of time where it's tragic. It's just tragic. And so to the practitioners who don't see energy and wonder why they don't, or to the people out there who might not even be shamanic practitioners but wonder why they don't, I would say all the more reason to never try to force it open or to wish you could, because you probably already have a lot going on in your life, and you know, you're probably being spared a bit, and if that's what you really want, might happen one day. But I would definitely get to a place where, yeah, you're ready for the emotional reality of that. So, yeah, there's an example from my book. I talk about that one in more detail, but there's the gist, and a bunch of other examples. So if you practice shamanism, or you're thinking about practicing shamanism, and you feel called and you're not entirely sure, pick up my book, and yeah, it will definitely offer you a perspective, and it will definitely ground the path in a Western context instead of just giving you everything is love and light and positive and just be naive and everything will be okay. So, yeah.